Hi, it's Tamara Harper of Smallwoods Studios. Today I'm going to show you how to make this commemorative ornament for 2024. Maybe you bought the pattern, maybe you bought the kit, maybe you're just getting all the materials on your own and doing your own version, but I'm going to show you step by step how I do it. There is the original I voted for so that you can gift it to your church-going, Trump-supporting family members who are, back the blue and Law and Order. And then a lot of you guys wanted the I did not vote for so that you can keep it for yourself, pass it down. Everybody loves a handmade modern heirloom ornament. So let's get started. All right, here are the supplies you're going to need to create the ornament. You're going to need an embroidery hoop, either 2.5 inch or 3 inches. If you use a 2.5 inch hoop, you're not going to have a lot of room to work and maneuver your needle around. So today I'm going to be using a 3-inch hoop just to give me some extra room to maneuver. I like to use DMC brand embroidery floss. I use the 310 black, the 347 red is my favorite red. Sometimes I use different blues and greens. Today I'm using 370, it's kind of an olive green, and this kind of like a true navy blue, which is 336. I've got my scissors. I've got fabric. I use quilting cotton fabric. It is a little bit see-through, but it is not too stretchy. So anything that is not too stretchy or see-through should be good to embroider on. You might also want some beeswax just to condition your floss. I'll talk about that in a second. You might want a threader, and then the embroidery needle. Embroidery needles are great to use for a project like this where you're not going to be using all 6 strands at one time. However, the eye is really small, so it might be a little difficult for you to thread. I'll show you how to use a threader in a minute. If you would just prefer to use a sharp needle with a bigger eye, that is what chenille needles are, and a lot of times I put these inside my kits. To finish your hoop off, I always like to hot glue a circle of felt on the back, and I like to tie a little piece of twine at the top, and let's get started. Okay, let's talk about your fabric. If you bought a kit, then I've already done this part for you, but if you're at home and you're wondering about your fabric, I'm using quilting cotton. When you cut a square of it, you can kind of tug on it. One way that you tug on it will be very, very stiff, like it won't give any pull. And then another, if you pull on it in the other direction, there's going to be a little bit of give. With the side that gives, I like to put that as up and down so that if your pattern does kind of get skewed in the hoop, then it looks a little better to just have it stretched up and down rather than side to side. So that's just a note about your fabric. The other thing is you want to cut a square that is about 3 inches bigger than the embroidery hoop size that you're using. So I'm using a 3-inch hoop, so I'm using about a 6-inch square. All right, let's talk about how to get the pattern onto your fabric. If you bought a kit, then I have been able to iron on the pattern because I have the iron-on pattern. I might make those available to purchase one day. I'm not really sure. 2 other ways, though. If you bought the digital download, then you have 2 options, okay? You can either go to your computer, put this in instead of paper, print it on sticky Fabri-Solvy. Then you will cut it out. You will put it right on top of your fabric like it's a sticker, and then you'll be stitching through the Fabri-Solvy, which washes out at the end when you're completely done sewing. It washes out with really cold water. The other way is to trace it by hand. You'll need to print it off on a regular sheet of paper. You can tape it to a window and then tape your fabric on top and use a friction pilot pen to trace it. This ink will come out with a hot hair dryer or an iron, like the steam from an iron. It's awesome. So you don't even have to trace it perfectly because this ink will come out. if you have a kit and I have done the iron on, this ink is not going to come out. So there's always pros and cons to all three methods. So I think that covers getting the pattern onto your fabric. So let's move on. Okay, for those of you who have the kit, I've done this step for you. But if you're at home, you want to loosen this hardware and pop out the middle ring, put it on the table, and then put your fabric on top. The way that I do it is I kind of stretch the fabric on top to kind of center it as best I can. Again, the stretch of the fabric should be up and down, not side to side. And then you'll put your outer ring on top. I try to make sure that the hardware is kind of centered at the top of the design. And then you want to just kind of pull the fabric nice and tight. And then you also need to tighten the hardware at the top. I always drum my fingers on the fabric like that because I want this to be taut like a drum. You do not want loose fabric. That will make your embroidery experience not very fun. So just try to remember as you work, you want your fabric to be nice and taut, and then you want your stitches to be not too tight, not too loose, just kind of relaxed, going above and below your taut fabric. All right, we're ready to thread the needle. We are going to pull the floss from the number side. That's what you always want to do. And I only use about 18 inches of floss at a time. Where are my scissors? Here they are. That way you are not working with way too much, string to get itself tangled on itself, but also not too little. Embroidery floss has 6 strands. And what we're going to do is use 2 strands for the lettering in the center. And I do like to work do the center first and then work my way out. And I'll explain why later, but we're going to do this script lettering first. So just carefully separate your floss, as we're only going to use 2 out of the 6 strands for right now. The proper way to do this would be to also separate these 2 and then put them back together so they're not so twisted. But honestly, I usually skip that step and I just keep them together. If you wanted to, you can condition your floss with the wax. It's like your long, beautiful hair, and you're conditioning your hair, and separating the floss would be like brushing your hair so that it's not tangled. You just decide how you want to go about using your floss. All right, the way that I have my floss situated is that I want to tie a knot on one end and I want my needle to be on the other end. So the way that I tie a double knot is I make a loop and put the tail through 2 times and pull not too tightly, because you want that knot to be big enough to not come through the fabric as you're stitching. All right, and then on the other end, we're going to want to thread our needle. If you're not used to threading a needle, you can use a threader. I love this threader right here. You're going to put the hook through the eye of the needle and then kind of hang your thread on the hook and then slip the needle off the hook. You'll want to leave about 6 inches of tail right here. Always, hold your thread onto your needle if you're not used to sewing. Again, your knot should be at the other end. And if you have a long tail, maybe just go ahead and clip that. And then we are ready to get sewing. Okay, I have a whole video on just the word rapist If you're interested in that, I think it's called Embroidering Tiny Script Lettering. But the idea behind it is the lettering is made up of small straight stitches or fly stitches. And a fly stitch is when you come up, make sure your knot is against the back of it. Again, I'm not yanking too hard. A fly stitch is when you have a point where you come up and then you go back down and then you kind of stop it from becoming a straight line because you're pulling your needle up somewhere in the middle so that it's a curve. Okay, so that's a fly stitch. And I'm just gonna tack it right back down. This is called couching it down or tacking it down. And then that's your fly stitch. Straight stitch is exactly what it sounds like. You would just come up, go back down. Wherever you come back down, that's gonna create a straight line. All right, and my thinking on this next step is I want the focus to be on creating each letter and then connecting them afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to right here and create another fly stitch for this letter S. I'm going to stop it about right here. I'm going to show you another trick here, which is I can couch it down right here. And if I feel like this part is too flat, I can actually come up and couch it down again to kind of open it up. So it's actually couched in two different places. That's completely fine. You can do whatever you want. This is embroidery, it's freeform. It's not cross stitch where you have to, stick to a grid. Another stitch that I really like to use is a single chain stitch. And I'm going to create a small loop right here by coming up, holding it over with my left hand and going back down in the same spot that I just came out. Now, if I pull this all the way through, it's just gonna do nothing, but I'm going to bring my needle back up at the very top of that S, and as I pull it up, that will create a loop, and that's called the single chain stitch. All right, and I've got my letter S. I'm going to connect it to my letter T. And there we go. Letter I is very simple, just one fly stitch. And to dot your I, I usually just make a tiny little straight stitch. You could also do a tiny French knot if you prefer. I have very short videos on how I do a French knot. All right, let's do this letter P. In lettering, copperplate calligraphy, for example, is based on the shape of ovals. So you'll do ovals a lot with lettering. The way that I do that in creating this oval for the letter P is I'm going to use a fly stitch for the bottom half and a fly stitch for the top half to create your oval. And again, I'm creating the letter and then I'll attach it after. For this letter P, I like to just do one straight stitch from top to bottom, but I kind of like to bend it or make sure it's connected to that oval. So I'll bring my needle back up. So it's kind of like a fly stitch or just basically a long straight stitch that is couched down. All right, so we're going to connect that back with a straight stitch and move on to the letter A. I'm going to make a fly stitch. And you might notice I'm holding it over with my left thumb a lot. come up right here, and that'll give it a nice curve. Create my oval with a fly stitch on the bottom and a fly stitch on the top. All right, for the letter R, I'm going to come up right here and do a fly stitch. Then I'll do a straight stitch right here and another single chain stitch for this tiny loop. All right, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that the back is like I'm pulling this out of the way so that when my needle comes up right here, I'm not bothering the stitch that I just made too much. All right. All right. I'm going to hold it over to the left. I'm going to come back down in the same spot that I just came out of. But before I pull that loop back through, I'm just going to stop it with my needle and go. I'm going up and over and couching it down. All right, and then one more fly stitch and we're done with this word. There we go. All right, so I like to work from right to left a lot of times. I just feel like since I'm right-handed, as I work, my hand is covering up what I've done instead of hiding what's coming next. However, it's perfectly fine to work from left to right, so we'll do that right here. If I worked over here for the next part, then my thread would just be traveling a little ways. It's fine for your thread to travel. Maybe just slip it under some stitches so that it's a little secure. All right, let's do this next part. I'm going to do a fly stitch for the bottom part of the F. And then I'm going to do a straight stitch for this part right here. And then I'm going to do another fly stitch. You can come all the way around like this. This is a part where I like to couch it 2 times because that is kind of a big loop. So you can kind of open it up a little bit more. You can do the same thing down here. I keep kind of pulling it with my needle. All right, this part right here, I just do a gently bended fly stitch. And then I'm going to connect this to my letter E. Here we go. All right, for the letter E, I'm going to make a single chain stitch for this loop. And I'm not pulling that very hard. I kind of want that loop to be open, so I'm not, yanking it as hard as I can. Now, what happened just here is I pulled the couch piece a little too hard. So what you can do is you can open it back up with your needle like that. So if that happens to you and you've kind of yanked it so much that it kind of slurps down on the other side of the fabric, don't panic. It's probably fine. let's do another fly stitch to finish this letter E. And then moving on. All right, what's happening with my thread at this point is it's getting a little separated. So sometimes I like to just kind of take my finger and my thumb and pull on my thread a little bit to make sure that it's even. Again, that would be where if I had separated them out to begin with, that might have been helpful at this point. All right, with the letter L, we're going to do a loop and couch it at the top. And a fly stitch. And I'm going to come up right here, like away from what I just did, so that I don't mess it up, if that makes sense. A lot of times it's better to come back to what you did instead of coming up right where you were just working, if that makes sense. All right, for our letter O, we're going to do single chain stitch for this loop. And a fly stitch. And I'm coming back to what I did and couching that down here. All right, the letter N is 3 fly stitches. Here's the first one. The second one, I'm going to just kind of come up right there in the middle. And I like to go all the way back down to the bottom of the letter N right here. In calligraphy, that's how you would do it. I know in printing, you wouldn't go quite as far down in creating a letter N, but I think it looks nice to go all the way back down. And then your final fly stitches right here. All right, so at this point, I feel like I don't have a lot of thread left, maybe 6 inches or so. I'm going to show you 2 ways to tie off your thread. Since I do have some to work with right now, I'm just going to slip my needle. I'm not stabbing through the fabric. I'm just slipping it under some nearby work. And I'm going to slip it under again in the same spot, creating a loop. And then I'm going to go through that loop 1, 2 times to create a double knot. And I'm just going to gently pull that snug, but not too tight, because I don't want to disturb what I've done on that side. All right, if you don't have enough thread to work with and you feel like you need to tie a knot, what you can do is separate these 2 pieces and then just tie it in a double knot. And then you can trim it. And let's start again. All right, I'm picking back up my floss that I had separated before. There should be 4 strands left. So we're gonna separate this in half, 2 and 2. This is not really the best way to do this, but it works. Again, this is kind of optional to run it over some wax. We are going to tie our double knot. 1, 2. You don't want too much of a tail. And then on our other end, we're going to thread our needle. What I like to do is So I like to pinch it completely between my finger and thumb, and I kind of needle the thread, which is I'm moving the needle, and I kind of pinch back down so that it gets threaded all the way through. All right, let's do the ampersand. Ampersand is straight stitch, fly stitch, couch it down right here. If your thread is separating like mine is, you can kind of tug it this way. You can couch it down multiple times if you want to. I'm just going to move on. Oh, another thing. So I need to come up right here with where I just left off. I'm actually going to like kind of scrape my needle and just barely come up where I need to come up instead of poking around and messing with what I have just created. All right. And again, I'm kind of pulling this taut on the back as to not disturb what I've done. All right, holding it over to the left, we're going to do a small single chain stitch like this. All right. All right, we're going to work right to left on this word. All right, fly stitch and an oval, which is 2 fly stitches. Oh, get rid of that. And hopefully working this way has prepared you for this word, because this word I kind of had to squish in here. So these letters are a little smaller, just because that's how the design is. So if you get frustrated on this part, it's because the lettering is quite small. Another thing I feel like is that I've been pushing and pulling on my fabric, and it's a little loose in the hoop. So I'm gonna retighten. Again, you just want to do this periodically as you work. Retighten the hardware. Oh yeah, much better. All right, your letter E once again is a single chain stitch. That you might have to open back up or couch twice if you want. Plus the fly stitch. Letter T is 1 big fly stitch. With a straight stitch across. Letter C, 2 fly stitches. Usually on this one I do couch it twice. So I'll do it 1 at the bottom here, and then 1 to kind of pull it a little closer to the T. All right, and then 1 more fly stitch. for the letter V, I usually do a teeny tiny fly stitch here. To connect it. I guess I could have created the V and then connected it after, but what can I say? I'm inconsistent. All right, the V is 1 fly stitch. All right. And once again, the letter N is 3 fly stitches. 1 for the very end of it. Again, I'm coming all the way back up just because that's how you would do it in calligraphy. And again, these feel much smaller than these letters down here because they are smaller. I'm going all the way to the bottom of this for this fly stitch. Like this way. All right, 3rd fly stitch. I'm gonna start away from it. Oh, and I've, excuse me, I've just pulled my thread off my needle. All right, I'm gonna go back here for the 3rd fly stitch. Oh. Okay. All right, another O is single chain for the loop. I'm going to try not to mess up what I've done here with this fly stitch. Letter C, 2 fly stitches. Oh my goodness, we are almost done with this section. I have made close to 100 of these at this point, and I would do them in batches, and I would always do the black lettering first. And I always felt like this was a huge turning point or a milestone when I would get this far. So you're doing great. All right. I love making this letter A. It's so satisfying. I don't know why. This long piece right here, I just do 1 gently bent fly stitch, 2 fly stitches for the oval, oops, excuse me, I bumped the camera. One big fly stitch here. I do like to come up a little higher so that you can really tell it's an A. I'm going to angle it down like this, come all the way over there. You can couch it down right here as well as couch it to that oval again if you want to, but most of the time I think it's fine like that. And then 1 little straight stitch or a fly stitch right here to end it. Yes. All right, we're going to flip over our work, slip our needle under something nearby 2 times. Again, this is much easier to do with a slightly bigger hoop. If we were using the 2.5-inch hoop, it's a little hard to slip your needle under work. Whoopsie. All right, slipping that through 2 times, pulling snug, but not too tightly to screw stuff up on the front. And let's move on. Okay, after all of that work, I heard Fester crunching his food and he needed a bath. So it's good to just take a little break every once in a while when you're doing embroidery. I find that working about an hour at a time and then getting up and getting some coffee and getting a snack and taking care of your animal friends is much better in the long run because you're not gonna make as many mistakes and you'll be refreshed. And so let's get back to ornament making. Okay, we're back. We are going to do 2024 next. I was going to just show you quickly. I like to organize my floss on clothespins because you can wrap about 2 skeins of floss around 1 clothespin. You can either write the number or you can glue the actual number that it comes with right on there. Again, I'm going to cut about 18 inches. And again, we are going to use 2 strands of floss. And I'm going to carefully separate it. Oop. Set the extra 4 aside. Run it over my wax. Tie a double knot on one end. 1, 2. Not too much of a tail. Other end. Gonna thread it. And we're ready to go. I love doing this part next because it's so much easier compared to what you've already done. The number 4 is 3 straight stitches. The way that I like to do a number 2 is 2 straight stitches and a fly stitch. 2 straight stitches about right here, so that you kind of have this half circle situation. I'm gonna hold this tightly on the back so that when I come up, you can come up right against what you just did if you want to, or you can come up away from it and then come back to it. And then here's your fly stitch to create the number 2. Two fly stitches for your number 0. There you go. I'm doing this very carefully so I don't bother what I did too much. All right. All right, and then as we're finishing this goes back to what I was saying at some point, working in the middle of the hoop and starting in the middle of the hoop and working your way out, because when I want to tie this off, when I flip it over, I have some nearby work to slip my needle under. If I had done the red first or the green or the blue first, I wouldn't have this to tie my thread off quite as easily. All right, that's it. For the greenery, I am actually going to use 3 strands just to make it a little more thick than the lettering. Cutting 18 inches. I'm going to split this in half. 3 and 3. Just gently separating it out. And essentially I'm going to repeat myself on a video that is titled How to Embroider Vines. I'm going to tie my double knot. I don't even use this. You can run the wax over it if you like. I'm going to thread my needle. All right, and the way that I do these vines is I come up at the very bottom and I do single chain stitches for the leaves. Oopsie. Also, you can trim this excess fabric. You just don't want to cut it too short. All right, and then I've just been doing straight stitches for the stems. You can also do fancier stitches like a stem stitch or split stitch, some stuff like that, but generally for these I've just been doing a back stitch. You come back to what you just did and perfectly connect it, come up away from it, and coming up at the base of the next two leaves, I'm going to connect this back. And that's why it's called the back stitch. All right, and just keep doing the same thing. Two chain stitches. You can do another little tiny straight stitch inside there if you want your leaf to be filled in. That's perfectly fine. I don't know why, I've just been leaving them open for this ornament. Okay. And again, I'm just kind of budgeting about 3 stitches for the stem right here in between each set of leaves. 1, 2, 3 coming up at the base again. Again, I hope this part is really fun because that black lettering is a lot of changing and a lot of, little stitches that's right all next to each other. And I always enjoyed this part of the hoop because it's much simpler, especially after you've been focusing so much on all the different things that you have to do to create that script lettering. All right, for this top part, I either do 2 or 3 straight stitches and then one single chain at the top. And that was it. Generally, I do go ahead and tie a knot for this side before I do the other side. I don't want to travel my thread all the way across here. I don't know, that's just what I've been doing. Honestly, nobody's going to see the back, so I want to empower you to do whatever you want. I'm going to do this side off camera, and then we'll come back and do the navy lettering. All right, guys, we are almost done. And if you haven't figured it out already, we're going to be using 2 strands, and all of the letters are created using straight stitches and fly stitches. I don't even think I use a single chain stitch for this top part of the lettering. 18 inches of thread, wax, tie a double knot, and thread the other end. There are these cute little things called needle minders, something like this where it's a magnet and you can put it on your hoop.
That way when you put your needle down, it snaps to the needle minder. You can totally use those, but for a little tiny hoop like that, I just usually don't, and I just like to get in the habit of tucking the needle into the corner of the fabric. Just a little pro tip, or not so pro tip. All right, again, you can work left to right or right to left, really doesn't matter. For the letter D, you can couch this curve 2 times if you want, but since it's so little, most of the time I just do the one. Try to do it maybe just ever so slightly higher than the mid line. Does that make sense? Like a little higher? I don't know. Just a personal preference on that. You can do many different things to create this. And if you're doing bigger lettering, and I have a separate video on how to embroider script hand lettering, a lot of times I use back stitch, where I'm connecting straight stitches to go around curves and things like that. But for tiny lettering like this, obviously, once again, doing a lot of fly stitching. This is going to be an example of back stitch because I'll do a straight stitch, and then the next one I'm going to start away from it and come back to it, and away from it and come back to it. 2 fly stitches for the letter O. All right. Oh, I think I was just pulling too fast. All right, if this happens to you, just try to loosen the knot. And it usually can come straight out. If you've pulled that really, really hard, you might just want to clip it and tie it off and start over. I'm just getting to the point where I'm probably working a little too fast. And I did not separate these 2 strands and put them back together, so they're a little twisted. Again, I've done this about 100 times now, and I do feel like I wrote the words vote for particularly small, so sorry about that. If you feel like this is a little cramped right here, it probably is. Over. Alright, guys, we are almost done. And then I'm going to show you exactly how I finish off my hoops. Excuse the trash truck in the background. All right, and for the R, do a straight stitch, a fly stitch. You can just do one like this because that is such a small curve. And y'all, we are done. All right, I'm gonna slip this underneath some nearby work 2 times. Putting my needle through that 2 times. All right, let me show you how I finish this off. All right, we have finished stitching. We are going to retighten the fabric, make sure it's nice and taut in there. We're gonna make sure the hardware is tight, and then we're gonna flip it over, and we're gonna trim this excess fabric away. You see how the hoop is about, I don't know, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, something like that. You're gonna want to leave about that much fabric around the perimeter. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Just don't cut too much off. You can always trim more later. All right, my hot glue gun is plugged in, and while it heats up, I'm going to show you exactly how to measure and cut the circle. All right, remember the inside hoop of your embroidery hoop? You want to put that ring down on top of your felt, and I am holding this pin straight up and down. I am not going like this to get the line. I am going up and down, which will create a little bit of space around the ring as I'm tracing around it. Oh, and this isn't working very well. Just get another pin. There we go. All right. This does not have to be perfect. Since we angled the pin straight up and down, I should be able to trim all of that ink away, so it's not actually going to be on the ornament. This does not have to be exact, but this will give you an appropriate size circle that's not too big, not too small. All right, I think this is ready. Bear with me on this. So what I like to do is hold the hoop in my left hand and kind of put a bead of hot glue right here at the top of the wooden frame. And then I'm going to start right here at the very top where this hardware is and start folding it down. I personally always use an all temperature or low temperature glue gun because I always get hot glue on my fingers. And just kind of keep going on around. Again, you want the glue to be on the hoop, not on the back of your work, like right here. All right. And just because this is an ornament going on a tree with all the little lights and everything, I don't like to be able to see through to the back of my strings and everything. So that's why I kind of cover it up and protect it with a piece of felt. So again, we are going to hold it in our hand like this, put a little bead of glue all the way around on the inside of that ring. Put it down on the surface and just kind of gently put it in there like a pie crust, and you've got it. All right, let me show you how to tie the twine. All right, cut about 8 or 9 inches of twine, put the ends together. You're going to put those ends through the back to the front, and then put the ends through that loop that you just created. Like that. And then when you make a loop like this and put the tail through, that's called an overhand knot. And there you have it. So you've got a loop here and it's nice and secure. And I kind of trim so it's nice and even at the top.
We did it. Thank you so much for following along, for following my work, stitching, doing all of that. I'm not really much of a YouTuber, but I do like providing tutorials for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you have questions, concerns, if I've missed something, just let me know. I'll do my best to answer. Thanks so much.